It was 1986. The Cold War was coming to an end, and the Soviet Union was not winning. They were embroiled in the middle of a war with Afghanistan, and they were not exactly making headway. But besides the proxy wars, one particular aspect of the Cold War really stands out: the nuclear aspect. Both sides had enough nuclear bombs to blow up the planet hundreds of times over. However, weapons weren't the only thing nuclear that existed. Both sides had used nuclear power, and both sides had their respective problems with it. The U.S. encountered their first serious accident on 3 Mile Island in 1979 with a partial nuclear meltdown. However, it wasn't nearly as serious as what happened when the Soviet Union had their turn 7 years later. It was April 26, 1986. The operators of the Chernobyl power plant in Chernobyl, Ukraine, were administering a test to mimic a loss of power. In order to initiate the test, they would need to shut down some of the safety systems that would otherwise prevent a meltdown from happening. Disengaging these safety systems broke several safety regulations, which would never be allowed in the United States, Europe, or Asia. The test was conducted at about 25% power, but when Kiev needed power, they delayed the test for several hours. During this time, xenon-135, a neutron-absorbing isotope, amassed inside the reactor. This was unseen to the operators. The test resumed, but the operators couldn't control the level of power because the xenon-135 was absorbing neutrons that were needed for power production. In order to stop the reactor from shutting down, the operators pulled the control rods that were absorbing neutrons. This completely infringed all operating procedures. This made the reactor able to rapidly increase its power. When they tried to reconduct the test, there was still enough power to turn the water used for cooling the reactor into steam, and, with the safety system shut down and the control rods pulled out, had set up a situation where the power could increase uncontrollably. This is exactly what happened instead of the expected lowering of power.
The resulting massive and sudden increase in power, where it reached 100 times maximum power in seconds, caused a huge steam buildup, which resulted in a massive explosion. A second explosion soon followed, which blew the shield on top of the reactor off and blew the building apart. The shield resettled, but improperly, allowing air to get into the reactor and the argon gas that is normally in the reactor to escape. The air made contact with the hot graphite on the control rods, causing the graphite to ignite, which in turn dispersed radioactive material out into the atmosphere. The resulting fires took 10 days to finally get under control, during which time several workers received lethal amounts of radiation, and approximately 5 to 10% of the radioactive material in the reactor escaped into the atmosphere. It took the Soviet government over a day to evacuate the nearby city of Pripyat, and it took several days until the government evacuated other nearby areas. 116,000 people were initially evacuated from the nearby area. Later, another 220,000 people were relocated from cities further from the Chernobyl plant. The Soviets were not exactly forthcoming with information about the accident to other countries or the world until, during routine radiation checks on their own reactors, operators in Sweden detected higher levels of radiation and, finding no reasons that the levels should be higher, looked to the winds and discovered that they were coming from the Soviet Union. Under the following political pressure, the USSR revealed that they in fact had an accident. In the years following the accident, several things have occurred. First and foremost, the Soviet government built what is called the sarcophagus, which is a steel and concrete construction over the old reactor to contain the radioactive material inside. These efforts are continued today with a new cover being built to put over the original crumbling sarcophagus. As for health-related issues, surprisingly, very little has been found in the general population that has a direct connection to the accident, except for a massive uptick in thyroid cancer in children and adolescents who were living in the area at the time. However, thyroid cancer is easily treatable if caught early, and only 15 deaths have occurred from it, from thousands of cases. However, the effect on the immediate area surrounding the reactor is not so easily treatable. The area will be uninhabitable by humans for 25,000 years.
Following the accident, the Soviet and Russian governments have taken precautions to prevent such an accident from ever happening again. First and foremost, they shut down all reactors in the Chernobyl power plant by 1999. They have subsequently shut down all RBMK reactors, of which Chernobyl was one, deeming the reactor's design too dangerous. They have also implemented proper and full safety protocols to prevent future accidents from happening. Even though the radiation released from Chernobyl was relatively low, it still spread to several countries. During the 10 days in which Chernobyl was spewing radiation, Poland, Sweden, Germany, Italy, Finland, and Czechoslovakia received the largest quantities of radiation, though it spread to most of the northern hemisphere. They received only very small amounts of radiation, except for localized hotspots of radiation, but these hotspots were not the norm.
This was the first time humanity had encountered the full effects of what could happen if nuclear power goes wrong. The following exchanges between nations have allowed them to explore options of not only safety in nuclear power plants, but also cleanup and subsequent healthcare following a nuclear disaster. Chernobyl has taught us many things, first and foremost of which is the extreme care that must be taken around nuclear power. The ability to make a large area of land uninhabitable for thousands of years should not be taken lightly, and only after Chernobyl has humanity really seen the horrific effects. And since then, our respect for nuclear power has increased dramatically, as it should have. While other horrible nuclear mishaps have occurred, Chernobyl reigns supreme as the single worst nuclear disaster in history.